of Higher Education, IUP grad, local boy. Morning, Ken.
Morning, Todd. Sorry about that. Caught in traffic, and I'm still in my car. So
Oh, my goodness.
Hope this is still clear enough.
It is, and I appreciate all the extra effort on your part. We have a few things we need to discuss with you today. One of those is Chancellor Brogan announcing his retirement, and of course that will then begin a cycle of searches to find a replacement for him, and I'm sure that the Board of Governors and everybody involved is getting that process going right away. Is that correct?
Yes, we'll need to have at least an acting chancellor in place on September 2nd. The Chancellor Brogan is leaving September 1st. He's retiring September 1st, so the board will act fairly quickly to have an acting or interim chancellor in place, and then begin a search for a permanent replacement.
Now, typically that doesn't take a great long time. As I recall, Chancellor Brogan was named only 3 or 4 months after the previous chancellor left. But this is a time of transition for the state system, and I'm sure that as you go looking for somebody, there are some interesting criteria that you're looking for, some qualifications. So, especially with contract negotiations coming up, with the strategic review, this is going to take someone with some skill.
Yes, it is. I think it's going to be this is a very challenging time for the state system for all of our universities. So certainly, in looking for a new chancellor, it's going to need to be someone who's ready to take on some very serious, heavy lifting. And just to sort of clarify, search process generally takes at least 6 months once it gets started. The last time around, as you mentioned, Chancellor Kavanaugh left in December. It was really the following October before Chancellor Brogan was on board. The search itself generally takes 6 to 8 months, and then it may take a little bit of time to bring the person on board. So it'll, at least 6 months or longer is generally the search process.
Well, Chancellor Brogan and the Board of Governors all were in the room last week when the strategic review consulting firm NCHEMS was giving its report. From the state system's standpoint, Ken, talk a little bit, if you will, about the reaction to the report. Was it what was expected, and how do we move forward from here with the results of that report?
Sure. We were looking for an independent, a thorough, a very significant report. I know some of the folks who were following all this process throughout. Maybe we're expecting a few different things. There had been talk about possibility of mergers, closing of institutions. That was never the intent. It was never something we wanted to do. Our goal was to have all 14 universities, very sustainable, very thriving. That was our hope. But we did have to leave everything on the table for the consultant. We wanted them to look at everything. What they came back with was some recommendations for some very significant change in the way the system is governed. Not mergers per se, but the universities collaborating more, maybe offering some more joint programs, maybe some of the stronger universities providing some administrative services for some of the universities who are struggling more. There's a lot in there. We're hoping to get the meat on the bones tomorrow. The actual formal report is due tomorrow. What we heard last week was pretty much just a summary of the findings and the recommendations that the consultant had come up with. So what's going to happen now is once we get that report, the Board of Governors will take a very long, serious look at it, and will decide which of the recommendations it believes should be pursued.
Some of the TV outlets that I've seen have tried to make a connection between Chancellor Brogan's retirement and the results of that report from NCHEMS. I don't read that into that at all. Is there any feeling in that direction?
No, not at all. And actually, the Chancellor had informed the board privately of his intent to leave prior to the release of the report. And if you were following this whole thing last week, you know that nobody saw nobody saw the report. The Chancellor didn't. The board didn't prior to the board meeting last week. So his decision came prior to this, independent from this. One of the other things that we've seen is some people trying to tie the criticisms of the management structure or the governance structure of the system, portraying that as criticism of the chancellor or others who are within the system now. And the NCHEMS officials have made very clear that they were not talking about individuals. What they were talking about, the weakness is in the way that we are structured, and if anything, they actually are calling for increasing the authority of the chancellor. One of the things they pointed out was that the governance structure we have doesn't really allow the chancellor the authority he or she needs in the policy making area. So there really is no connection there. The chancellor had made this decision independent of anything that is in that report, because again, he made that decision before the report was ever unveiled.
And those changes that you just talked about would have to come from the legislative branch, would they not?
Most of them would, yes. The call for changing from a board of governors with a number of political officials, there are legislators on that board, the governors on that board, to a board of regents, which is strictly lay members, no government officials, no university trustees. Right now we have 5 university trustees on the board of governors. To make that change would require legislative action. So a number of things that are in the report would require legislative approval. So this is the release of this report is hardly the end of the process. If anything, it's probably the beginning of the process. Now, because from here on out, we're going to have to do, again, whatever the board decides to pursue is going to take not just the system and the universities changing. It's going to require, working, again, with the legislature, with the governor. The feeling is these are Pennsylvania's public universities. Everybody has a stake in this, and everybody should be involved in this, and that's what we've tried to do throughout the review process. We tried to engage as many people as possible. There were more than 120 meetings held across the state on each of our 14 campuses here in Harrisburg. Over 120 meetings. More than 800 individuals signed on to the website set up by the consultant and offered their own personal individual suggestions and recommendations. And I think, if anything, what this process has shown is just how important these universities are to people in Pennsylvania and just how much interest there is in their future. And I think that's a good thing.
Couple of moments left with Kenn Marshall, spokesman for the state system of higher education. Ken, one of the items that we note as well is that negotiations are preliminary or opening negotiations on a new APSCUF contract are scheduled to get underway next month. That's what happens when you have contracts that are negotiated well after a contract that previously expired, is they come up again very soon. And we've just been through a very, very difficult negotiating session. And my question, I guess, is, does the search for a new chancellor, does that have any impact on the opening of contract talks next month?
It should not have any impact on the negotiations. Certainly, the negotiation may have an impact on the search, but it's a process that we do have to go through, as you mentioned. Not only did the prior contract, or did it take longer to negotiate this contract we have now, it's also a shorter term than we usually have. So that's another reason why it's we're right back at the table, essentially less than a year after we had the last contract settled. Yeah, well, that's one of the things that folks are going to anxiously watch. I appreciate your time with us this morning, especially as you had to negotiate a little bit of traffic. Ken, thank you so much for being with us here this morning. We do this from time to time, and you're always very accommodating. Thank you. Thank you, and I always appreciate being on. All right, there's Kenn Marshall from the State System of Higher Education with us here this morning on Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank.